So it's June the 5th and we're in a new seeding grass field out here in Sumas Prairie. The year that we're having this year, with the amount of rain that we've had, I went back on the Weather Network, checked the last 2 weeks of rainfall that we had from, I think it's May 21st to June the 5th. We've had over 125 mils of rain. That is that's over 4 inches of rain. So the ground is absolutely saturated. I walked into a cornfield this morning that needs to be sprayed, and I literally got stuck with my boots because we're plowing 6 inches deep, and with 4 inches of rain, that water has hit that plow pan smear and has just made mud above. It didn't look like it was super wet, but putting my foot in there, I couldn't get my boot out, and then by putting the other foot forward, it just sucked in. So I've never had that happen before. So some of these fields obviously are super wet. So this time last year, we were irrigating like crazy. The corn took off like a really fast start. Corn is a heat-loving plant. Grass is like the new seeding grass here. Last year got off to a really poor start. It was too hot, too dry. Even people that irrigated the grass didn't get a very good germination stand on it. This year, this grass field here is pretty well 100% germination and growing exceptionally well. It loves cool weather, it loves moisture every day, and it just looks super fabulous. Now with the new seedings, you got to be super careful because of that over 100 mils of rain we've had in the last 2 weeks. They're super saturated, so you got to now let them dry out. It's June the 5th. The next 5 or 6 days, the temperature is supposed to get up to 28, 29 degrees. Yesterday, it was down to 10 degrees, so you can imagine the switchover from 10 degrees, 3 times the temperature come Sunday. So just crazy weather that we're having, extremes one way and the other way. So it just depends on the year that we're having more of a cooler, wetter year, so we're going to get a lot more grasses. People on the second cut walking out in the fields, and they've told me, the farmers have told me the same thing. There is an enormous amount of second cut grass coming off. Just let the fields dry out. Be careful. Take your quad out to drive around. Make sure you're not going to put deep ruts in the fields, especially your new seeding fields. The shame of it is if you cut them too early and they're too damp, you're going to rip them all up. Let them dry out thoroughly and then go in there and cut them, and then make sure the grass, because it's so lush, that you make sure you dry it a bit more than normal. So you want the moisture not above 60%, 55, 60 is good, but not above that, because they're so lush, they're like lettuce, and if you put it out wetter around 75 or 80, it's going to go very butyric on you. So new seeding grasses, because they're so lush and they're so thick, you got to make sure you dry them a little bit more than normal when you put them up for silage. So on the corn side, because the corn's been off to a cooler start, I looked at some corn that was planted April 22nd. It's only about that high, and it should be like this. It just simply didn't grow because of the lack of heat. With the heat that's forecasted coming up the next week, they'll definitely come along and take off. So but again, you got to watch some of these fields as well too. The weeds now are really starting to come, because again, the weeds like it cool and wet, no different than the new seeding grasses. And because the corn isn't growing, the weeds are going to start getting ahead of the corn. So again, walk these fields, make sure they're dry enough. You don't want to get the sprayer in there stuck, but you got to look at them and make sure we spray them on time. So you probably might have to look at spraying them twice, once early now to clean off the first flush of weeds, and then once later on, maybe 2.5, 3 weeks later, we come in a second time with a half rate of Roundup on both sides to clean up all the weeds that are in there. So the corn will come. I'm not too concerned about that. The areas that are wet in the fields, we're going to have some damage. Not much we can do about that. But hopefully in the end, usually in a wetter year, if we get a wetter spring like we've had into the first week of June, July, that's wetter, our bunkers end up fuller. We get more grass, the corn will come on its own because the heat is naturally coming on its own. It's when we get a really super hot, dry year like last year and have to spend a lot of money and time irrigating, then it's really hard to try and fill our bunkers up. So we'll keep an eye on the weather, watch your new seedings, take a look at the corn, keep an eye on the weeds, and we'll see how the season progresses.